Greetings! From EA employees answering questions in a video to the official FIFA 22 gameplay trailer and 35 plus pages of pitch notes outlining what's to come for FIFA gameplay in FIFA 22, we've had a load of new info our way. Now in today's video, I'll try to summarize and analyze my thoughts about everything that I think is most important. Of course, I suggest you all go and check everything out yourselves because I'm not going to talk about everything, but I'll try and include as much as possible. Before we get into everything though, keep in mind that anything and everything I say is on the basis that words don't mean much to me. That doesn't mean I'm negative. Nobody wants an amazing FIFA 2 experience more than me, and I'm not here to tell you that the game is going to be bad. I'm just not here to tell you that it's also going to be good. I'm neutral. I'm waiting to actually play the game. I don't think that's too crazy of a stance considering that FIFA 21 was marketed as a game that was meant to have amazing offensive AI. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. What it was actually a game where players like Moment Scrife would be on the edge of the box, and rather than staying there or searching for the pocket, they would just leave. They would just leave for the hot dog stand up north and try and leave the box in a direction that made no sense. As we say in Italy, tra dire e fare c'è di mezzo il mare, which translated means that there's a whole ocean between saying and actually doing. Anyways, starting from the actual trailer, my biggest concern was this clip of this pass. This was giving me FIFA 21 90-yard through ball pass vibes where the center back just never locks on. It's only a clip from a trailer, so it's impossible to say if it will be just as common as the infamous FIFA 21 Umut ball, but it's definitely amusing how every year, whether it's a nutmeg like last year or this through ball this year, we have lingering PTSD. The biggest thing is definitely though the massive pitch notes article, which we're going to get into right now. They start off by explaining the basis of how they wanted to develop the game, and that was around the feedback they received and also based off of trying to fix situations that are frustrating for the user and making a game that makes multiple styles viable. While this is something that is said every single year, yes, it sounds good, sure. They then go on to explain a lot of the new technology, the hypermotion technology used to record a whole bunch of animations, but bear in mind that a lot of this will be irrelevant if you're still on PS4 and not on PS5, so if you can, I would suggest getting next gen if you plan to play FIFA. That being said, all this talk about hypermotion technology is great, but we'll really only be able to tell if there will be a next gen jump when we actually play it. One thing they did mention though is that after improving last year's offensive AI, LOL, this year should be even better thanks also to this new technology, but like I said at the start though, we will have to see. Seeing how the defensive AI moved in the trailer, a lot of people were scared about more AI defending. They were getting overload ball side vibes. For me, when they mentioned focus on zonal defending, I was curious because in general, I enjoy when players stick to a zone and then they thus force you to select them to cover a run. It keeps your line intact, and if you want to cover a through ball, you do it yourself, as opposed to now where a lot of lines break and it gets messy. On top of that, it means that center mids in 4-3-3 formations may not be useless, which could be very, very interesting. The sad part is that in typical EA fashion, they mentioned how now placing non-center backs at center back will make that player worse. I'm not saying that I want fullbacks at center back, and I'm not saying that fullbacks at center back should be the meta, but if they haven't solved through balls, this doesn't make things better. Fullbacks at center back were necessary to try and combat broken through balls, similar to the one that we saw in the trailer. And in the worst case, this change would lead to you being helpless because now you're forced to defend with center backs who are inadequate at dealing with the passing system. Next up, they mentioned the competitive master switch, meaning that in most online modes, we will all have the same controller settings. This is great, but also 1 year too late. This is the bare minimum. I can't forget and get over how we had a whole year where the game would contextually dribble for you. For me, that's insane. But I'm also not going to jump on the semi-manual hype for passing. More on that later, but I have explained it before. But if you think making more manual solves passing, that would be thinking that it was always needed, which isn't the case. But again, we will see, and I'll get more into it a little bit later. They also do mention that we will have more match statistics. I can't wait for people to have more things to blame, like expected goals as a statistic after taking 25 block shots. But jokes aside, it is a nice touch. The first gargantuan red flag, the explosive sprint. Here we go, a new mechanic to let you explode in a sprint offensively and defensively. Other than the defensive part, it really looks no different to the L1 sprint boost from a couple of years ago, just without having to press L1, I guess. Regardless, the obsession with emphasizing 1v1 situations continues. When are we going to have an obsession for rewarding moving the ball around? I don't know. You'd think that after FIFA 21, where everyone spent a year looking to isolate their striker, to spam skill moves, to spam cancellations, while ignoring his other 10 teammates, they'd have let this one go, but here we are. Maybe it will be class, who knows? Finally, changes to tactics are also mentioned. Now, it's funny how this is quote-unquote new, but really it's just something that we used to be able to do, but slightly different because of the user interface. We used to be able to change values for both our chance creation and build up in FIFA 18 and FIFA 17, but then we went backwards in FIFA 19, so it's a happy moment for sure. But as usual, I love how they make it sound like innovation, when in reality we're back at square one, maybe square 1.5, but better to be at square one than square -1 for sure. Hopefully this is, again, a nice change. Unlike the FIFA 18 ones, we can't control the values, it seems. It seems like we have to use presets for chance creation and build up, like the Imogen shows, but here's to hoping that it's enough. Last year they said they reworked passing from the ground up. They aren't saying that this year, which is sad because I think it should be worked from the ground up again. But then again, maybe it's just a superstitious Italian in me, but now they didn't say that they're working it from the ground up, so maybe now it's actually going to be good. I don't know. I'm just thinking like I usually do in terms of superstitions. The last sentence, though, is what really worries me. Vision assistance. Assistance increases based on the player's vision attributes starting at 85 and up to 99. It worries me because everyone will blindly assume we're all good now because through balls are semi-assisted, but they literally say assistance also increases based on the player's vision attributes, so this is also going to affect, ground passes. I know people want Toni Kroos to be usable, I know, but for me, it's much more important that manual interceptions and reading the play is always going to trump any statistic for passing, because if the previous FIFAs taught us anything, it's that the problem with passing assistance is not that it helps you in your aim, it's more so that it helps you depending on the scenario. It's that it'll pass wherever your opponent isn't, so what your opponent does is irrelevant. It's too automated, but it's not solved by manual passing primarily. It's solved by not changing a trajectory based on where your opponent is. It's about forcing you to pass in time before your opponent gets to where the pass should be played, as opposed to passing based on an attribute, which is what it has been. And as it sounds, it doesn't sound good, but again, we will see, and you're gonna hear me say, we will see. So take a shot every time I say, we will see. What they say and what that one clip showed us in the trailer, it does scare me for now. For dribbling, it all sounds pretty fun if true, where they're basically making it more precise, better at higher speeds. Some things do sound worrying, like the ability to flick the ball up in your dribble and avoid tackles. These are just things that raise red flags for an experienced survivor of the FIFA meta across the years. For something that can repeatedly be done and spammed to have the ball bounce all over the shop like a potato, I don't know, that kind of scares me, but I'm absolutely happy to see that left stick is gonna get a buff, and hopefully it plays out as it is in my head. Next up, skill moves. A bit of a yikes from me for sure. Yes, you cannot croqueta cancel. Let's all cheer, but you can still cancel, and you can cancel other things, which is weird. Like now, you can cancel step overs, and my only question is why? But here we are, we have to survive, we have to adapt. The biggest concern is, of course, the first time skill moves. I know, something even worse than canceling. Potentially, this is potentially going to be a nightmare. I really am worried for this. First time fake shots have always been amazing as is, but now with people doing first time step overs, first time roulettes, first time McGee's, like first time anything, just think it and it's possible. I already know that this is going to be an absolute drag to play about, like against and defend. I don't know how something like this is considered possible. Maybe they forget there's a reason Messi is killing it in real football, but professional skillers perform on a stage and not on a pitch. I don't know, maybe that's just me. For the goalkeeper rewrite, I hope this translates in a real improvement from your typical 82 rated beasts to the 91 rated Oblaks, and when you make that jump, please have these Oblaks save near post shots. That's all I ask. In the defensive section, here we are, but for me, when you start this section with the header, fair and predictable outcomes, yikes, way to set the bar high. Of course, we all want that, and of course, if true, this is phenomenal, but when we talk about tackles, animations, a search for cleaner outcomes, etc., etc., you have to see it to believe it, and then you have to see it over a long period of time to actually really believe it. All we can do now is be happy that they are trying to solve what was a big issue with the 2 tackle attacks last year. But then out of left field, they talk about interceptions and disrupt interceptions, which is just more words to say that they claim they improved interceptions. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this sounds amazing. This makes me a very happy man on paper. On paper, let me say it again, on paper. Hopefully, like they say, it does reward you when selecting the player and thus manually intercept. A huge problem from last year that obviously plays along with passing assistance. Teammate contain. This is a big one, boys. You guys know me. If you know me, you know. Or as it should be called, second man press. Something that if, again, you know me, you know how excited I am about this. I want to get my hands on this as soon as possible. But then you read what they say, and if you're me, you're kind of bummed out. First off, they mentioned there's a cooldown. So, okay, it's not perfect. I can kind of live with this. So once you second man press with someone, how long he does it depends on who he is, maybe stats, stuff like that. And then once they reach the limit, there's a cooldown. Questions are going to be how long is a cooldown? How long can you do it for? Is the cooldown in general just for that specific player? Things like that. But the real tragedy is that how well they press depends on their defensive awareness, work rates, and stamina. 3 factors, 2 of which make absolutely no sense. Why would work rates and defensive awareness matter? Think about it. Did we not just see the Euros? I mean, it's absurd to think that once again, second man pressing with your front 3 will be terrible. I cannot be the only one who just saw Italy's front 3 in the Euros press out of their minds. But unless Immobile, Chiesa, and Insigne have high defensive work rates and 90 defensive awareness, I feel like it'll be a bad feature to use with your front 3 and thus press high up the pitch. But I guess we'll have to see. On paper, this sounds like a bit of a gargantuan L. And as we get to the tail end of these pitch notes, there are some more important nuggets of information like icon switching and the new player rotation switching. While you can read up on it yourself, I don't know if at the highest level for me there will be any time to use these features. Old school right stick switching at the highest level I think will be the way, because you just have to be as fast as possible, and things like, you know, having the exact icon on top of the player you want to switch, telling you, okay, if you want to switch to this exact player, flick right. I think that's too much time. You have to do it faster, and I think right stick switching will be key, but in offline modes maybe this could be okay. We'll see. We'll have to see. They also talk about directional clearances, giving you more control. Sounds great. And they talk about technical clearances, where the ball hopefully gets cleared as far away as possible from the area. Now, obviously, both of these things will have their place, but for me, I'm excited because perhaps, especially against the almighty constant press, we can actually clear the ball now and not have it intercepted mid-air from our opponents doing a split at 90 degrees or whatever they do. But speaking of constant pressure, nothing was said about it, which is a big yikes for me because I don't know how it's still in the game, but here we are. More comments on tactics and instructions that they do mention sound great. My favorite is the step up instruction for defenders, which is supposed to supplement an aggressive defensive style. Again, these are things that, you know, we have to play with and try to see how they truly work. Finally, they also mentioned how they changed the top speed, dribbling and running and all that stuff in FIFA. So over a long distance, fast players are supposed to shine, but not to worry if you're a slow player, because you will actually feel better because of their changes of speed in a short distance, which sounds great too, because if you can keep your team compact, slow midfielders should feel good. Now, this is all I wanted to mention. I definitely recommend you all have your own reads and your own research across everything that was released from EA, because again, these are just my thoughts, my quick thoughts. I wanted to make it as quick as possible. And there are things that I didn't mention because I just wanted to keep it as fast as humanly possible. But by all means, let me know your thoughts down below if you did go through all the information, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.